the Health Hub with Dr. T. As you guys know, I'm Dr. T. As always, I give a disclaimer is everything you hear on our live, everything that you hear on this page is general information only. Don't come up and say, oh, Teneshia said da 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 da. No, do your own research, but we are here for general information, for questions, and to guide. So with that being said, I'm gonna do a little introduction, then I'm gonna let you introduce yourself. It is such an honor to have you on this live. I know you personally, but you are a big deal. You're not just Tanisha husband, like you are not. You are the Harris County clerk. Like you're on the news. I see you on the news. I saw when you were campaigning, and I just want to take this opportunity to really appreciate you for not even thinking twice when I reached out to you. I went back and forth for a couple of days, and I just said, you know what, I'm gonna text her. The worst she's gonna say is, no, I'm busy, and you are busy because I'm watching what you're doing.
Yeah,
And you were like, oh yeah, that's fine. Yes, let's educate the people
that's right.
what day. And I was like, and like, so I truly appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. I see that you even have a live on, or you have something with ABC in the morning. Like you are back to back to back. So being on the Health Hub with Dr. T is a big deal. So thank you so much. I appreciate you for being here.
Well, Dr. T, thank you so much for having me on the Health Hub. When I was like, you know what? Politics is all involved with healthcare. So this is going to be a great conversation to have.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yes.
Am I giving some tidbits now or should I wait?
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead and do your introduction.
Well, if you're watching, I see Diane traveling on here. Hi, Diane. Like folks are logging in. I'm Teneshia Hudspeth, and I'm your Harris County clerk. And most people would not know what does that truly mean. Well, I'm
Yes.
a countywide elected official, and in 2020, the people of Harris County elected me as the youngest and first woman of
Wow.
color to serve in this role. But prior to becoming the county clerk, I spent 15 years of my adult career where I started as an administrative assistant in this office. And 6 positions later, was really blessed to become elected. And I'm giving a shout out to Diane because she was the clerk before me, and I
Wow.
was deputy, and she supported me. But if I could just give a little bit of background
Yes.
about myself, I'm from Austin, Texas. I moved to Houston to attend the Texas Southern University where I studied journalism and took my journalism talents and communications talents into the political field. And so that's the short and skinny of it, because I know you want to get to all things. Uh,
Yes.
and the work that I do is so very important. So I'm glad you asked me to come on because there's no demographic that should not hear what we are going to talk about.
Yes.
It is really, really important. So excited to be here. Thank you as a friend. And more
Yes.
important, thank you as a future colleague because we're going to continue to educate. This is not going to be the only time, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And she's my sorority sister. So a little
That's
plug
right.
there to
I'm
DSC.
ready all tonight.
You're ready all the time. Awesome, awesome. So I want to start with that. I want to go. So some questions I'm going to ask, and as you know, we don't prep. I don't prep,
Yeah,
so it's really organic, and it's
good.
just really a conversation. I grew up in a household where we were told to vote.
Hmm.
As soon as we were of age and were able to vote, go ahead and vote. You should be educated. My parents spoke about politics in the house and just a good conversation. So voting to me is almost second nature. I'm
Hmm.
almost like, even when I didn't really understand, to be honest, what I was voting for, I was still voting. And so I think where I thought about this election was that it's not a big election. When I say it's not a big election, it's not the presidential election,
Hmm.
right? Everyone comes out for the presidential election. Everyone thinks that that's really the only election that matters.
Yeah.
And so I wanted you to educate me and everyone that's going to watch this live, go back on YouTube and kind of try to understand what the different elections mean
Hmm.
and why we shouldn't just wait for the presidential election, but the states, propositions, what we just did, right? All of those things. Why are those things important? versus just saying, I'm just going to do presidential.
Right. Well, much like you, voting was ingrained in my very fiber. I remember
Mm,
as a little girl growing up, going into a polling location to the local library with my mother. Was a very
mm-hmm.
young mother, but understood the impact of voting and how it not only meant important for the life she was living at that time, but for my future. So it's
Mm-hmm.
no surprise that many, many years later that I'm in the work and
Yeah.
passionate work. But if I go back a little bit, I grew up in a very civically engaged household.
Oh.
And so while I didn't understand elections per se until I interned in Congress in DC for a congressional member, doing the work here helped me to understand. So first of all, if you're listening and you're like, when it comes to elections and it comes to politics, it's such a big deal. um, and every year there are elections. I know some people don't believe that, but here in the state of Texas, every single November there's
Mm.
taking place. Obviously, everyone really turns out and pays attention when it's a presidential, because
Yeah.
money is put into advertising and encouraging people to vote for the president. But when you get to an odd year in any state or any area or primary season, because they're all different types of elections, those local elections is what's most important to you in your state, because that's what meets you at your doorstep.
Right.
So if we're talking about right now, and I'll kind of give, what an off year versus even year, every
Right.
even year there is primary elections, and then there's the
Mm.
November general, where voters across the state and nation vote for their federal representatives all the way down to your most local, like Harris County.
Wow.
And so next year will be midterms. So everything from senators to state reps to
Yeah.
down commissioners and local folks. And then obviously in 2028 will be president again. But in odd years, after every legislative session in the state of Texas, those senators and state reps vote to vote on particular constitutional amendments. Some people say,
Mm.
what does that mean? They're proposed amendments, and typically those amendments always have to do with your taxpayer dollars.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to be very, very hard to understand what for or against means. And so, after every legislative session, which this was the 89th legislative session, our elected officials vote to prescribe what will be on the ballot. Now, my role as the election official or county clerk is to run elections. So that means making sure there's equitable amount of polling locations throughout the county, that we
Mm.
hire election workers across the county. And those election workers are not like specially appointed individuals. They're your neighbors, your civically
Wow.
church members that say, I'll step up to serve and
Wow.
get registered to vote and vote, but actually trained to work as election workers. They're appointed and assigned to polling locations. My job is to make sure that all the voting equipment is in compliance. We follow the law,
Wow.
and they're prepared and ready to go for voters to vote. We also make sure that we go through every single ballot style. So Harris County is the third largest county in the nation. The third
Ooh.
largest county in the nation. Orange County, California is number one. Number two is Cook County, Illinois. Harris County is number three. It is the size
Wow.
of 25 states combined. And obviously the biggest county in the state of Texas.
Wow.
Whenever we're doing something election related here, and I know Houston's a melting pot and we have smaller cities
Mm-hmm.
around like Pearland, Sugarland, those sorts of things. It takes in Harris County a 9 to 12 month window to prepare for the next November election. Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes, 9 to 12 months. So what does that mean? Right here during this November election, my staff and office is already working to prepare for the next November midterm, to train, to allocate, to do all the things. And just in case you're wondering, I don't have the jurisdiction to just go find a facility and say you have to be a polling location. Those are typically privately owned community centers, libraries, schools that say, yes, you can be a
You can
poll.
do it.
And there's a lot of compliance that comes with that. And so
Wow.
that's a sort of brief overview. In my office, I have 400 total full-time employees. Half of those full-time employees, 200 of them work in elections, and the other 200
Mm.
serve in other roles, which we can kind of talk about later, that, the county clerk's office is just not the election official. Uh,
Wow.
and it takes about 12 to 15,000 volunteers to carry out an election. So there'll be about 12,000 people in the field Tuesday to make sure you, the people that are watching, are able to vote and cast your ballot in secret, safe, efficient environment. So I'm giving you a summary of it, but it is so much work that goes to making sure people have the right to vote. And, this November is one of those elections after people have voted in a presidential, they think their job
I
is
know.
they think their job is done. They wash their hands and things are unfolding. And look, if you've never believed that voting was important before, you should be able to see from the start of 2025 to now, whether you
Voting is important.
fence or not, is the results of an election is real. And the voter apathy that we have by not turning out in local elections, we pay for that in a very big way. And so,
Absolutely.
yes, this November,
Ooh.
we have 17 state constitutional amendments. So, what does that mean? Anybody that's a registered voter in the state of Texas will get to vote on those 17 propositions. Each one of
Mhm.
them have their own meaning, and it all involves your homestead. There's a proposition that relates to bail reform in the judicial
Mhm.
system. There's a proposition that has to do with health care
Yes.
sources. And so what we know now is there's about 18.9 million people in the state of Texas. A very small margin, not even, I think maybe 300,000 in the state, not in the state, sorry, 200,000 in
Mhm.
Harris County early, but not even a million of those folks have really turned out, maybe short of a million in the state of Texas.
Mhm.
So for and against is really important, understanding those, doing your homework, looking at your sample ballot. And I always like to refer people to the League of Women Voters guide. It's a nonpartisan guide. As a matter of fact, you're here on live. You can go to LWV Houston and they summarize it in 2 sentences
Which
for you
one?
to
Mhm.
understand what for and against means. And then unlike and hop in here because look, I'm full of all kind of
I
information.
am. I am.
So
Well, yes, I'm gonna hop in because the
yes,
summary that you just gave,
yeah,
you're like, oh, I know that doesn't sound like no, ma'am, that's a lot.
it's a lot.
Because that's a lot of responsibility also with especially so much around the election, and it's like, oh, is it real, is it fake, did I get it, I did a mail-in, I went in,
Yeah,
someone is disabled or they're sick and they're not able to actually vote a certain way, what are the so it is my mind is like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my gosh, you have a lot of responsibility.
a lot of responsibility, a lot of pressure, and
Yes.
focus is always when it comes to the state of Texas. This always focused heavily in on Harris County, which is the largest, most
The
urban
largest one.
county in the state, and so it is a lot of pressure. But
Yeah.
amazing team that helps us get the work done, and but there's never one election, no matter how small or big it is. They are all just as important, and they're
Yes.
created that if we don't do the job right, then we can pay
In the
really,
long run.
yes, we
In
can.
the long run. So
That's
I'm sure people are probably gonna think like, oh, why is the health hub with Dr. T doing, like, why am I talking politics? Because I'm more of a conservative, like I don't ruffle feathers. I just try to give out facts and so much. But I think about public health and I think about what you said, like that's all part of health. The health hub is not just about medical health. There's financial health, there's public health, there's physical health, mental health, all of it, because it all plays a role in something you said, our day-to-day life.
mhm,
So I want people to understand how voting can play a role in your health moving forward. No, whatever that looks like, mental health,
mhm,
physical health, public health, that all plays a big role, right? So with this one, I want to talk about this election first.
mhm.
You made a good point where you're saying people need to understand the for versus the against.
That's
Because if you're not used to voting and you come out and vote and you're like, wait, I agree with this. So am I like, but the way it's written, am I against it or am I for it? Like I found some information. I don't know how it got on my feed, but I've been looking, trying to understand the propositions before I get to the voting site, right? And so I got one that was like a cheat sheet. It's like, this is good, this is bad.
mhm,
And I was like, oh, got it. And that's from me that vote.
Yeah.
So I want you to, if you can, kind of explain the for and the against so that if someone goes in, they're like, oh, I know exactly, this is how I feel, this is what I believe in, this
Mhm.
is the choice I'm going to pick.
Well, it really is hard for some of the propositions on the for or against, because it just seems like one means yes and the other means no, but that may
Right.
not actual case. Now, while
Mm-hmm.
I am the county clerk and I have to run on a ticket, I have to be nonpartisan and be very careful on how we guide individuals. And so, the reason why I mentioned the League of Women Voters Guide earlier is because what they do is provide like two sentences and they say what the for or against actually means,
Okay.
that you're not kind of really tricked into understanding the meaning of it. And look,
Mm-hmm.
the league doesn't just have the propositions, they also have the candidates, because this ballot, and we'll get to that in a minute, has races on it that typically wouldn't be on the ballot in an odd year. Like
Oh.
elections to fill a congressional district and a city of
Mm.
Houston at large position. So when you mentioned earlier how healthcare ties into voting and local elections, like our statesmen actually have at least two propositions on there that impact the healthcare system. I mean, everyone knows right now the federal government is on a shutdown.
Yeah.
Hundreds, thousands of individuals are not working right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes it's hard to connect the dots when it comes to voting, and how do I have a play or a say in what happens in Washington D.C. and how does it trickle down to our state side. And so, when you think about that, for federal employees who are not getting paid, they can't go see the doctor, they can't whatever, it all really does boil down to those who you elect to office.
Yeah.
And not just okay to just get registered and go vote. You got to be an educated voter, which means it takes time and research. So if you're listening, I suggest, the League of Women Voters Houston Guide. They have it electronically on their website or online. Also, the Houston Chronicle does a voter's guide.
Mm.
Most of your
Oh.
media outlets, from news to newspapers, have a voter's
Mm-hmm.
guide that kind of gives some specifics there. And you know what? I'll share some things with you as well after this call that you can share
Okay.
with your people that follow you as well when
Absolutely.
it comes to finding that out. So every one proposition is different. There might be a case where it is, I'm trying to think, I don't have it in front of me, where it talked about it's a proposition about our parental rights. And some of
Yes.
this really ties to what you already have the right to as a parent. But
Right.
some individuals who feel like the government should be involved on uh, of what you can and cannot do when it comes to vaccinations for your children, when it comes to healthcare. So see, it all ties back to healthcare,
It
right?
does. It
Uh,
does. It
and so,
does.
you know, I'm glad we're having this call now, because people will have plenty of time to do their homework before
Yes.
Tuesday. And here's a really good thing you should know. You can actually take a printed sample ballot from Harris Votes. You can print that, or you can simply just take your notepad, right? And you can write down every proposition, not the full proposition, but just one yes, two
Right.
no. And you can take those written materials into the ballot box with you.
Oh. So you can take that, but you can't
Not
have your phone out.
right. So
Why?
So Texas election code says that you can use written materials to
Oh.
assist you with voting, but it does not. It prohibits electronic devices within a.
Mm. Okay.
And why? Because people would take selfies, and the voting
Oh,
close,
of course.
they will take a picture of their ballot selection, and or maybe get the person standing next to them. So there are various reasons. Now the election workers who are using their cellular or devices is to carry out the election, so they're allowed to be able to use the phone. But yeah, Texas law prohibits electronic devices within 100 feet of inside the voting station, but you
Right.
can take written material, so you can print
So
your ballot.
That's a good one to say, and I'm gonna post that because thank God I have a photogenic memory. So I can, if I go back to something I read or
Yeah.
an environment, I can bring it back up. I can be like, okay, I know green, red, right, So
Hmm.
when I got there this time around, which this one like I said, I studied, I researched a
Hmm.
little bit. I didn't just say, oh, I'm gonna go vote.
Hmm.
And then I got there, and she's like, oh, ma'am, go ahead and put your phone in your purse. And I was like, oh. My cheat sheet is on there. And she laughed. She was like, "Oh, yours." I was like, "So?" She was like, "No." I was like, "Darn it! Like I
You
should have
could have,
written it down if I knew." Because then I had to really read them and try to
yeah,
remember.
yeah, you had to go back to remember, but you could have asked, hey, can I go step outside, take my,
Oh,
and then come back in to vote after that. So there are a lot of do's and don'ts, I guess you could say, per se, when
yes.
it comes to voting. But that's why you hear, and I, my office, we do commercials, we do a lot of
Mm-hmm.
things to educate people is make a plan to vote. Number
Mm-hmm.
one, know what county you're in. Because Houston is a
Yes.
melting pot, just because you see in Harris County you can vote absolutely anywhere during early vote election, it doesn't mean in
Mm-hmm.
the other political jurisdictions. So if
Right.
you're voter in Brazoria County, Fort Bend, Montgomery, you have to vote in those counties.
Boundaries.
And so, but you can have written material. So that's what's going to be.
Okay.
It could be a voter guide. It could even be a push card that a candidate gave to you outside, as
Oh
long as
wow.
written materials. And I know some election workers will say, no, put that away. Um,
Right.
remember, I know we're so connected to our cell phones. Our
I
whole
know.
can't breathe without them, right? But really, do your homework
Yeah.
beforehand.
Yeah.
So I know we talked a lot about the 17 state constitutional amendments, but depending on where you live in Houston, Harris County, there's a special election for the city of Houston at large position seat.
Okay.
So the former council member was Letitia Plummer. She has vacated her seat to run for another office. And when that happens in the middle of someone's political term, then it becomes a special election.
Okay.
So everybody who resides within the city of Houston limits, right?
Mhm.
Not that you just have Houston on your city address, because you could be an unincorporated Houston, right? In
Right.
area. There's 15 candidates in that race,
Oh
and
wow.
right in. So talk about having to do homework, right? To figure out which one of those candidates are the best for the
Hmm.
next city of Houston. And then, most importantly, especially, and I'm going to tie this back to healthcare, Congressional District 18, which was formerly held by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who passed away last year,
Hmm.
and then former Mayor and Congressman Sylvester Turner, who passed away in March. That seat has been vacant since March
Oh.
of this year, and it has not been filled. And unfortunately, our governor of the state of Texas has not moved on setting a special election prior to November. So it has been almost a year that the residents of Congressional District 18 has not
Mhm.
had representation, which means they can't fight for federal funding and get
Oh
to
wow.
their constituents. In CD 18, there's 800,000 people that live in that
Oh
district.
wow.
Of those 800,000, 400,000 are actually registered. And
Hmm.
so when we talk about a low turnout election, when you weren't suspecting to see a congressional race, because it's typically in the even year, that's really important, because the vote
Yeah.
will finally get to choose who represents me. And there are 16 candidates in that race.
Wow. Why do you think, with everything that's going on now, right? Why do you think people are still not rushing out to vote? Like, I'm the opposite. I'm like, what? Like, if
Yeah.
I wasn't as, I have a cousin, she's a physician out in Oklahoma, and
Mhm.
I love her because she's so knowledgeable when it comes to like politics, like my parents, but I love going to her too. So I'm like, wait, this is happening. What does this mean? And even the way she breaks it down makes me like want to learn more.
Mhm.
So obviously, this last year, 2 years, a
Mhm.
lot has been going on that is kind of forcing everyone to educate themselves.
Mhm.
But why is the turnout still so low?
Well, I think there's various reasons why people choose to vote in election or not choose to vote, right?
Mm.
Number one at the top of that list is simply lack of education, right?
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
the information can be overwhelming and pretty daunting for the normal person that doesn't understand politics or elections. And quite frankly,
yeah.
civics is not even being taught in the schools anymore like it was when I was growing up, right? And so I remember graduating, and the first thing we received after we got our diploma was a voter registration card.
Wow.
When you don't have that kind of proactivity in the education system, that is a starting point. So lack of knowledge, lack of education when it comes to elections and what it truly means. And, some of that can be very strategic, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Voting base continues to make the decisions for the larger footprint. Number two is I think it's people's living circumstances, right? Like, what is your environment? What are you around? What do you have access to? Maybe what's most important on the list is feeding your family the next day, not necessarily, hey, I need to go cast this ballot because
Right, right,
I see a result in 2 or 3 years
right.
and that I just elected. Third of all is, I really believe there is a lot of voter apathy and people who just don't believe their vote does not count, is a big one. And
Yeah.
why that? Well, now, we have social media. It's really hard to know what's false versus
And
what's
what's
real,
real.
the myths versus the truth, and with such an oversaturation of, made up news outlets versus real factual news.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like even now with AI, it's getting even worse.
Yes.
Because I watch some videos and I'm like, I don't know if that's
Is
real
that real or not?
or is that AI? And I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna scroll because at this point
Yeah.
I'm confused.
Right.
Oh, someone said also like practicing voting in schools.
Yes, yes. So I'm so happy they mentioned that because my office, I have a community outreach team of young people who go into schools. And as a matter of fact, we recruit high schoolers
Oh
to
wow.
polls and they're paid for
Mhm.
it.
Oh,
So thousands
wow.
of high school workers, and I've grown this program since I was elected. By law, students can be at least 16 years of age, have the permission of their principal and their parent or guardian, and they are hired to work an election poll to understand
Wow.
elections work, and they're paid for it. And then election night, we have tons of high school students that come to help get the
Mm,
election boxes out of the car to bring into our central count to start counting, and help us
yes.
compliance. And so we have worked. Now, I can only speak for Harris County. If you're in another
Right.
Harris County, you have to talk to your clerk or your elections administrator. But it really does start in the school. So I agree with whoever just said the school.
Underscore fresh underscore Joey. I'm gonna give shout
Okay,
outs.
Joe, you're an educator and you work in the education system. We want to hear from you because political science, social studies,
Mm,
we love to come to the schools and do civic days, get them
mm,
registered if they're able to get registered, and have them step up to serve. But those are all reasons, voter
yeah.
apathy, lack of education, living circumstances, and then not feeling like your vote counts. And I really do believe we have to get back to the grassroots work. As a matter of fact, Samson and I talk about this all the time because we met doing grassroots work.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
there is nothing wrong with knocking on doors and having real dialogue with people, even more now than ever, because
Than
who
ever.
knows, we just talked about AI and
Right, right.
dialogue with knocking on doors, talking to your neighbors, talking to the people in your community. If you're active in your church, having a panel, look, this, we're not telling you how to vote. We're just educating you on the impacts of voting.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think that's where people because even for my life, right? I think that's where people kind of get a little like, these days I don't know what to say and who to say it to and when to say it and how to say it. So I'm not gonna say it. But
mhm,
I think having healthy conversations, even if you're on opposite sides, parties, it shouldn't matter. It's just knowledge and it's just conversation. However, I'm realizing that some people don't see it that way. And
yeah,
they see it like once it becomes heated or they can sense what the other side is and it's that party, it's
right.
no longer an educated conversation. It is now attack, attack, attack.
Well, yeah,
So
and look, the political environment, the atmosphere in recent years, and who's been elected has helped to not make that any easier. I
yeah,
think kind of strategic for chaos and confusion definitely pushes people away and kind of drives the day. But here's what we got to realize is that whether we like it or not, politics involves every single
it,
aspect of whether you're in healthcare,
yes,
you're education system, no matter what facet of work you do, it involves politics. If you sell
yes,
homes and you're in real estate, your legislators are making decisions on tax breaks and
for
what
you. Mm-hmm.
is in those areas. So look, if you're not into politics, they're definitely into you. And whether you're in part of the work or not, serves you well. And I get it. People say, oh, they're just going to do what they want to do at the end of the day. But that doesn't excuse us from sitting on the sidelines, right?
Yeah,
And just seeing and waiting to see what's going to happen. And I remember my mother always saying when I grow up, when you know better, you do better, right?
that's true. That's absolutely true. And I
Yeah.
think it's also the long game, right? It's
Hmm.
kind of like when you invest in real estate, you're
Hmm.
not getting that return right away. And I realize people want answers today. They
Hmm.
want to see their decisions, their whatever their vote is. They're like, okay, if I vote today, by tomorrow, how does this affect my life?
Sure.
But that's not reality because there are rules, there are things that have been put in place that mandates when and how to carry things out. That's why it's such this organization to it. And I
Hmm.
realized that people are like, what you said is my vote doesn't matter
Hmm.
because you don't want to wait 2 years or 3 years or whatever, however many years to see what you voted come to fruition.
And I think sometimes, we vote, and I'm not going to exempt myself from this just because I run elections. We vote, and you do expect to see a change right away. And when you don't see it, it's just going to do. But you have to understand, with every season, there elected officials, processes, legislation, it has to be followed up on.
Yeah.
And look, a lot of times we use the word they, right? They this, they that. And I always ask, well, who is they?
Who's that?
Right?
Right. Who is that?
No, we are democracy. We are the ones who
Mhm.
decide. It really shouldn't be, let's be honest, in politics where lawmakers decide who their voters are.
Yeah.
Because we're dealing with that right now. There were two special legislative sessions where the state redistricted major districts, which happen to be community
Wow.
color districts, which includes Congressional District 18. But we got to know that we choose our lawmakers. Our
Yeah.
law don't choose us. But you have to activate, because if you're not activating, then they continue to choose what they want, right?
Then you can't get mad. So let me see what they're saying in the comments. Tracy Ryan said fake news is real. Absolutely. The Tanya Nicole said, if you're not into politics, they're definitely into you. Everyone needs to hear that. I'm going to definitely post that because you don't think about it that way. Is you may not be into them, but they're heavy into you and kind of shaping how your life should be based on them.
That's what I always say. Look, um, you know, our voters are always on the menu, right? Or
Mhm.
the agenda, on the meeting agenda, or on the menu, the plate. So how you choose to show up, where you choose to be, right? And some folks are like, where do I start to get involved?
Yeah.
First thing you can do is simply go to Google and type in who represents me. And when you
Mhm.
get to that page on who represents you, you can go to Texas and you simply put name or address and a list of those folks that represent you in the district that you live in and the precinct that you live in. That's the starting point. Knowing who's my council member, who's my
Yes.
commissioner, who's my local level officials, and then hey, or who's the school board trustees. So if you're like, well, where do I start? It seems so overwhelming. It's a lot
Yeah.
to talk about and deal with. You start by learning who represents you. Because when you know who represents you, then the next level is okay, I can know what these folks are championing. Are they do I need to, contact their office, send a letter, write them, call their office to tell them where I sit on certain things, one or another. But that's a good starting point. Go to Google and
Okay.
represent you, because I know some folks don't like to admit it, but most of us simply don't even know who our local elected officials are.
Absolutely. And now I'm like, they're into me. I need to know who's into me.
That's
And I
right.
need to know what you like. Because I don't know if what you like is what I like now. So
Right.
guess what? So I'm definitely going to take that quote and move it forward into every aspect of my life at this point. Shoops underscore said voters education is really important and it's an ongoing obligation. And I think from home, school, community, like you said, church, everyone needs to talk about voting because that is absolutely something that is affecting our day to day.
And you know what's really good? Like when we talk about, in every aspect, I mentioned earlier that our election workers are not some magical or very appointed folks. They're literally, the people in your communities.
Yeah.
Many churches in Harris County serve as actual polling locations. There
Wow.
was a time that churches didn't want to be 5 feet close to
Right.
anything that
Politics.
politics, even if you're not telling them what to do. But in maybe the last decade or so, I've seen a lot more activity in churches, and most of them serve as vote centers, which are great hubs. They're ADA compliant. all folks can come
Oh,
in.
wow.
And so that is right. Outreach should be every year. Those civic organizations, every fall, when you get to October, there should be a town hall or symposium
Mm,
hosted. And simply like offices like mine, we'll send individuals out to bring sample ballots, bring voter education materials, and answer your questions, your hard, very hard questions that you're trying to understand. But it is a long game. It's not, well, I did my part. I voted.
right,
Now let's see what happens. No, it's
right.
now let me see where I need to hold these folks accountable. How did they vote in the state house? What are they pushing on the other side? What are they pushing back on that I don't agree with? And it is a long game. It is not let me vote and then go home and see what happens.
I owe it absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's what I'm also telling people is like, I know, like, my little community, I'm like, hey, I'm going to vote. Like,
Yeah.
and they're like, oh, there's
Well,
voting. And
well
I'm like,
I'm
what do
wondering,
you mean?
there's an election. So what do we vote
What?
on now? Right.
They're like, what are we voting for? I was like, let me send you this message because what do you mean? But
Mm-hmm.
I want you to also explain how can, in layman's terms, how can you tie why voting for even a judge
Mm-hmm.
can affect you and why I don't want to say more important than the presidential. We're not talking presidential, but how can it affect your day to day? I think people need to know
Yeah.
how you say that, oh, vote for this judge, or you see, all of that. How does that affect our day to day?
Sure. Well, let me just start with this because there's so many judges, right?
Yeah.
Every county has a county judge. The county
Mhm.
judge is not a judicial judge in a courtroom. That county judge is your emergency manager of the entire county. So,
Oh.
hurricane is happening, if there's a fire or any kind of incident, it's your county judge that communicates to you what they are doing to keep you informed and safe. When pandemics come to light, the
Mhm.
county judge is directing the county on what needs to be closed or open, getting vaccines. And so some people hear county judge and they think they're county judge of the court of law. That's not true.
Oh.
So every single county has a county judge and commissioners. And those folks are your local folks that fix your highways, your community
Mhm.
centers, things of that nature. And your county judge is sort of the go-to administrator of that board. Now, when we're talking about judicial judges, you have everything from criminal judicial judges, civil, probate. Probate has to do with your property and estate planning. Civil or non-criminal
Mhm.
cases. Obviously, criminal is criminal. You have family court judges that rule on family law. If your family is unfortunately going through a divorce and the parents are trying to figure out where their children are going to go, or there's abuse in the home. There's also judges that deal with the Court of Appeals, higher courts. When things cannot be figured out in a lower court, it can go to your Court of Appeals or your justice system, your higher justice system, which is Supreme Court, right? So there are tons of judges that are that you vote on.
Mhm.
And I know it can be confusing because you don't understand, well, what kind of cases do they,
Right.
right? And what do those judges do? And so essentially, when those judges are elected, they're elected to do a job. They can't talk publicly about their cases, but
Mhm.
they are charged with making sure that there is due process and really following the law. So judges can decide on bail, but every
Mhm.
every judge has laws that they have to meet when it comes to bail or bail reform. So sometimes when there's like a criminal case going on, and let's say someone was murdered, unfortunately, right? Some people say, well, how did they get out for that
Right.
small amount, or so on and so forth. So yes, the judge may make a decision on the amount, but they can sometimes, depending on Texas law, can't ask for more on a
More.
case versus another. So it's that sort of thing obviously can come very overwhelming. And next year in the midterms, everyone's ballots, depending on what county you're in, can be very long, full of all different judges. So might kind of make sense. Family court, okay, that court,
Yeah.
maybe child support, who gets the children, if there's abuse. Civil could be anything from I'm being evicted from my home, or there was some fighting going on. It could be many of things. Criminal is criminal, right? I think we know
Right.
with that arson, it could be robberies, things of that nature. And so There are basics, and I'll share that with you
So
too.
we're actually voting, when we're voting for all these judges,
Uh-huh.
we're actually voting for the judges that would preside over such cases.
That's right. Yes,
Mhm.
you're voting for judges that will preside. They sit in a courtroom. They go through cases. They all have to be licensed attorneys, right? You can't
Right,
say I
right.
want to be a judge, except for justice of the peace. Now there are justice of the peace judges that are considered more people's court, community courts, and they're normally located throughout the county, where they really deal with traffic, evictions, and certain other things, but they preside. And when you have that moment that you have to go to court, these individuals are the ones that hear your cases.
Okay.
And so in Harris County there's a very diverse court system there.
Right.
And it pretty much is around the county, but that is a really big deal when you're voting for judges. And oftentimes there's a lot of mismessaging politically, or vote soft on crime judges out, or vote this person or that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they're political attacks, because those judges are really, really restricted on what they can do. They have to follow the law. Texas
So there's still a law that they have to follow.
that's
Everything doesn't fall from them, but
that's
they do have some, I guess, modifications to what they can do. Like
hmm
if there's a range between, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, and
hmm
it's at their discretion, right? They can't go more than 10, they can't go less than 5. They may be like, hey, I'm going to pick 7.
hmm
But there are rules and guidelines for them also that they have to stay
that's
within. Okay.
and depending on the type of court cases, they're also assigned to have jurors. So I know a lot of people like to skirt around from jury duty. They don't ever want to be
I
picked.
no, okay, hold on. I want to talk about jury duty.
Yes.
Ever since when I was in school, I would get called all the time, but I could be excused because I was in school. I didn't live here. I have been waiting. I want to be called for jury duty. They're
Uh,
not calling me. Who do I call to
well,
tell them to
be
call
careful
me?
what you ask for, because then that
I
letter
know.
seriously come in hell.
If I can't even say it on camera what I want, but I'm
Yeah.
like, can they call me? They've called everybody around me.
Yes.
Everybody around me. And I'm like, come on. I'm ready. Like, can you? Nope.
So
They're like, you want it too much. We don't want you.
I'm glad we're talking about it, because jury duty is another way that we keep our elected officials accountable, right? So we don't think about
Um,
it that way. We just think about, oh, I gotta go park and go spend here. If they pick me, I'm gonna have time off from work and I'm not paid a certain amount of money. But the
mhm.
best way to know like how the judicial system work is to serve as a juror. And so in a lot of court cases, depending on how high profile or low profile it is, the people that are making the ultimate decision on whether someone is guilty or not can be the jurors, right? Of
That's
diverse
true.
individuals from their community. It is the peers of the people you live with that make decisions in courtrooms a lot of times.
Right.
And then, yes, the judge can make a call in terms of how many years someone is sentenced if they're convicted and confined in jail. But it's so many layers to that. So the next time you think about it and you get that juror letter, right? Think about serving, because there's no way, I know. Tell me we're going to send you all the good vibes. Get that jury letter
Send it to her. She'll go.
to serve, but as a taxpayer, you should want to serve. You should want to see what's happening in your court
Yes.
and the people that we're electing to be judges to do the job.
Absolutely. Stacy for Justice says you all are spot on your analysis. Not me, because I'm learning. I am
So
learning from
you're
here.
light speed ahead from most. So I'm so glad that there are some folks on here listening, and we're
Absolutely.
helpful. But
And it's not a pop-in topic. It's not. And
yes,
that's something that I also had to come to terms is that some topics people sometimes it's too much of a reality. Sometimes people don't even know. They're like, I'm so confused. I'm so overwhelmed with
yes,
so much information. I don't even know how to even, figure out which direction to go to. So I
right,
knew it wasn't popping, but people go back and watch, and people go back at their quiet time and try to understand,
sure.
because now that we're saying it affects you, you're going to want to know how to get out of things and what to do to vote the right person in for the things that you want to do.
That's right.
Stacy for Justice also said we cannot resolve criminal cases without jurors serving on juries. That's true.
That's right. So so glad that Stacy is on here and listening to this. Again, when we talked about earlier, why do we think people don't vote? One of the things that I think people gravitate to is they gravitate to a little bit of buzz, right? And news. The
Yeah.
sexier the election is, the more people will turn.
Yes.
So that could mean like who's on that ticket? What's the
Yeah.
platform of that individual? What are they talking about that resonates with voters that get people out to vote as well? And the truth of the matter is, there's far more money of interest groups being spent in a presidential year and even a midterm before they are in local elections. And why?
Mm.
Some of the lawmakers want that because they don't want you paying attention to what they're doing and how they're making those decisions. And so I'm just gonna call a spade, right? When it comes to that, sometimes you don't know an election is going on until you start seeing the slash negative ads, right? You start
Yes.
ads and you're like, oh, what we voting on? What's happening? And then you don't know what to believe when one commercial comes on and 5 minutes later another commercial comes on saying, don't vote for this person, vote for this
Yep.
person.
Yep. They like put their whole business out. Oh, don't
Oh
put it
yeah.
because they believe. I said, oh, what? And then it's like you come on like a saint. I'm like, I don't know. It's too much. So I can see why people, and people feel like they don't want any more bad news.
Yeah.
They're like, it is.
Yeah.
I don't know what
25
it is.
a tough year. Let's talk about that, right? It's been a
Yeah,
tough year. Um, the administration changed. I
yeah,
feel like we all got on a roller coaster and it took off with no warning, right? No matter what your political affiliation
yeah.
is. ER, I always say, look, there are not great people on both sides of the aisle, and some people that
Hmm.
don't have our best interests in heart. But 2025 has been a rough year. It's been
Yeah,
fast changes and a lot of promises unkept. And so this is not the time to say, well, this is what happened. I guess I'll fix
yeah.
next presidential. No, because everything that happens between now and 2028 is going to impact that time frame. And
Absolutely.
so if you're listening, remember there are 17 state constitutional amendments on the ballot. Tuesday is the last opportunity to cast your ballot. It is.
Yes.
And no matter what county you're in, make sure you go vote. The polls are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And as long as you're at your polling place in line by 7, you'll
You
be.
can't shut the door.
That's right. That's right.
I
Um,
walked in Friday
mhm.
at 6:46.
Good
I
for
said, oh, because I like to do early voting because
yes,
what I'm not doing is standing in line for a long time.
yes,
So because that's also discouraging. It's like
yes,
you get there, you see the line wrapped around, and you're like, I'll be back, but you're
yeah.
never back.
But
But
you're
like
never
early
back.
voting is like quick. Like I was maybe 5 minutes because I was telling jokes in there. Now
Mhm.
I was just cutting up in there. So I was telling jokes in there. Is why it probably took me
Maybe
5 minutes.
be an election worker, Dr. T.
I was gonna ask you how can I be an election?
Yeah.
You going you're gonna be like take her out.
We'll talk about that on the next episode. How do we recruit more people to be election workers? But look, I say there's no excuses. You have 12 days to early vote and you dragging
True.
your feet to go on election day. Shame on you. If you just look, there are some people who just love to vote on election day, and that's
Yes.
but anything can happen between that
Yeah.
time. Weather events, so on and so forth.
Anything.
Anything.
Anything and everything.
And I early voted on Friday too. Typically, I do it earlier in the period, but I did on Friday because I really wanted to take the time to understand the propositions myself. I'm an election official, and I know attorneys are the ones that prescribe those propositions, but they are not the easiest to make the decision,
Yes. I'm telling
right? And we just need a session on understanding what's on your ballot,
you.
right?
Right, right,
And
right.
taking questions on that. So if you're listening or you're watching this tomorrow, make sure you have a plan to vote. For Harris
Yeah.
County, the website is harrisvotes.com. And if you're not sure whether something's right or not, go to your official election office website before going to vote. And look, there'll be a lot of things on the media, but don't let TikTok be your voter guide. Okay.
You hear me?
Okay.
Because
It's all right to listen to
right,
leaders and hear what people's opinions are, but be
right.
your own voter guide and do the research before going to vote.
Absolutely. Underscore fresh underscore Joey said, I early voted ACC. Oh, he had the whole address. ACC 5601 West Loop.
Les West Loop, way to go. West Loop is one of the most popular votes
Yeah.
right there in the middle epic center of the city, in Galleria 610 area. So, all right, Joey, now you just gotta share between
Share, absolutely.
Tuesday. Tell people to go vote at West Loop where you voted. It was easy, plenty
It,
of parking,
they're
and
good.
yes.
Share underscore Jordan said in all caps, because he's yelling at us at this point.
Oh,
Don't let TikTok be your voter guide.
that's
Don't.
that's
Don't.
right. Retweet, repost. Don't let
Repost,
TikTok
retweet.
be.
Right. So, I mean, I think this conversation is good. I
Yeah.
know, like I said, I think a lot of people don't understand, and I
Hmm.
think a lot of people feel like it doesn't affect them.
Right.
And I can't stress it enough how voting does affect each and every one of us. As
Right.
I was reading it and as I was voting, there was things about Parkinson's and dementia, and I'm sitting, I do some work with the Houston Area Parkinson's Society, and there are
Mm,
things about me and parental rights. And it's just almost like I have to vote because
yes.
this does affect me. So if you've taken nothing out of this, take
Mm,
that it does affect you. And you don't want people that you don't like to make decisions
mm,
about your life.
hmm. And
And I'm a big proposer. If I talk to talk, oh yeah, talk to talk, I need to walk it.
that's right.
So don't talk politics with me if you don't vote.
That's
I'm gonna be
right.
looking at you like, my first question is, did you vote? No. Oh, you don't
Well,
even
then
know what
you
you're
can't
talking about.
complain. Didn't vote, you can't complain. And look, we've got to pass it down to the next generation because they have
Yes.
the lowest voter turnout. Our 18 to 25, 35-year olds are not the ones. The folks that are making the decisions for us are
Yeah.
50 and above. And most of the time, majority is 65 and above. And
Yeah.
so we really got to talk about how we get young people engaged. And it starts in the schools, right?
Absolutely.
And so we really have to make sure that local elections become just as much as our fiber as a midterm or a general election. And so if you're, it just don't wait to say, I'm upset, right? Um, Pay attention to what's going on around you because it will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, thank you. I can't even, I mean, I don't want you to think that I am taking this for granted because I
Yeah.
am not.
Yeah.
Again, even on the personal side, but just your position and even you breaking down your position, you are just amazing. I don't know how you keep it together because you're a mom, you're a wife, you're a daughter, you're an aunt, you're so many other things, right? While also overseeing 400 employees and overseeing voting. Like one of the biggest things in our lives, the
Mm,
voting is
yeah.
huge. And you've been doing all of this. I see you on the news, you running here and you in front of a library, then you're in front. I'm like, but
That-
continue.
it's
Wait, let me ask this.
okay.
Can we, because you were voted in, I'm
Hmm.
not in Harris County, because if I was, no question, but
Yes.
for those that are in Harris County, how long is your term?
Hmm.
Can we revote you in? What does that look like for
Yeah.
you?
So first of all, people should know like everyone that runs elections in different counties are not all county clerks, right? For some counties,
Mhm.
they're appointed election officials, but for county clerks, we have 4-year terms. And yes, I can get reelected. We don't have term limits in county.
Oh,
So county judge, county commissioners, treasurers, county clerks, district clerks, we don't have term limits. So essentially you can run as much as you want, but the people decide whether you stay in that office or not. So I'll
okay.
actually be on the ballot next year while running the election. And when we talk about next year in midterms, the first set of elections that's going to take place in early next year are primaries. And people
Okay.
really don't understand primaries, but in this
No.
Texas, there's two main political parties, the Democratic and Republican Party. You have to choose which primary you're voting in the state of Texas. And that primary selects who the nominees will be in November, like who gets the highest vote on the Democratic side, who gets the highest vote on the
Okay.
Republican side to hope to see who goes head to head in November. And I think people understand that.
Right, right.
Governor, all the way down to
Mm.
senators, state representatives, school board, county commissioners, county judge, county clerks. Typically, my contest is way at the bottom of the ballot. The longer you go down the, I've said you go further down the ballot, keep going, keep going.
You could.
see your local elected officials more than anything. And so there's a series of elections that take place. And I think people get a little confused or tired.
Right.
I just vote. Why am I voting?
Right. Right.
So if you're listening, that's how candidates are determined for November. It's the strongest folks that come out in
Primaries.
primary to be elected. So I'm
When is the primaries?
the primaries in March of 2026. And
Okay.
definitely have to have me back on because there's a different aspect after this to talk about redistricting, how that impact voters, what a primary really is, why you
Yes.
declare which party you're voting in. And so, yes, I'm seeking reelection next year in Harris County for another 4-year term to keep doing the great work that's been done so far.
And you're doing it
Thank
greatly.
you.
Yes.
Said earlier, I don't know how you do it. I simply say faith, a whole lot of faith,
Child.
and a wonderful, wonderful amount of staff that support me. So my family does sacrifice a lot for me to do what I do every day. And so a couple of them are listening right now. So I hope you know how grateful I am for them. And then,
Awesome.
yeah, pastors and folks that are praying for me
Yeah.
constantly and me up and supporting me. So that's why and how I do it. I love the job that I do. It can be daunting,
Yeah.
very heavy and stressful,
Yeah.
but it's important work.
And you seem to just, I don't know, love it. Like
Yes.
you're talking about this, like you could just be going on for like
Yeah. Oh,
a
yeah.
whole day just
We
talking.
could
Like,
have a whole civic series
wow.
and go back and forth. So thank you to everyone who hopped in and listened in to
Yes.
keep the dialogue going, encourage your
Absolutely.
church members. Thank you for having me. Hopefully
Absolutely.
it'll be
No,
the last
thank
time.
you. Thank you for saying yes. I mean, this was amazing. And we definitely, even if you didn't say I was going to come, well, I was going to talk to your husband because I also know your husband. I call him Brother Samson. I was
Yes.
going to be like, can we schedule your wifey to
Right.
come back? But we will be back in March because we
Good.
have to. And I want to keep this conversation going. And I don't, in March, I will plan a little bit better and have it a little
Well,
earlier.
it's February that we'll need to have it because people start early voting in February. February,
Okay.
it's early March. And so just know if you send a text message to Brother Sampson, he's gonna say, I'm not her scheduler. Talk to her scheduler.
I know he's even saying that in the background right now. He's like, I am not, no, that's a whole nother thing. But
Yeah.
yes, we will definitely have you back. We will talk about the primaries. We'll have you back again in October to talk about November. Because
Yes.
if we don't keep the conversation, if we keep it one time, people are like, eh. But if it's always in your face,
Then they'll look
it's
for
like,
they'll say, okay, what do we need to know about this election? Who's saying what and doing what? What's
yes,
true? What's
yes,
not true?
yes.
Uh, so, Dr. T, you're doing something great, and I pray that this
Ooh,
really expands your
thank you.
territory, expands your territory. So,
Thank you. Thank you. It's a lot of work, not not as work as you, but it's
yeah,
a lot of work. But my goal is to be a resource and to connect people with resources, give good, actual facts, factual information.
mm,
And so that's why I'm very, picky with who I bring on. But thank
yes,
you so much. Thank you for taking time out. I know you gotta get out
I have
early in the
more early
morning.
morning,
You're
so
on CBS.
crash.
I will be tuning in 9:15 on CBS to hear you. I follow you. I'm like, she's doing great things. So
Yes,
you motivate a lot of
we'll
us.
be on live talking about the election as much as we can to get people off their heinies to go vote.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for this evening.
You.
I'm going to start looping this so that people can hear this and be educated before they go in on Tuesday. Tuesday is voting day. Please go and vote.
It's the
Please.
last day. Do it.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good rest of the evening. Have a blessed week, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Health Hub with Dr. T. Have a good one. Bye.